Many doctors are actually working in employed positions, and they were told, if you use these drugs, you probably will be fired.
This is something that could have ended the pandemic if people had understood it, and instead it's being suppressed.
And such a violation, I have to stress, has never occurred before for any medication ever.
The federal government is incentivizing hospitals to prescribe a medication which is toxic.
This is a study designed by the World Health Organization that is not only designed to fail, it's designed to kill.
Guess what they did? They gave her a 5-day cycle, and my mom is dead.
Is this about money? Because if it's about money, then it's disgusting that we killed a person for the price of a stock.
Academic medicine is committing fraud, is committing, I think, a crime against humanity.
And if you ask me, this isn't a hospital, this is a concentration camp.
I've interviewed doctors, nurses, vaccine-injured, malpractice survivors, and even interacted with heads of the FDA. And my work has been repeatedly censored. What I've found is an unholy alliance of public, private, and political groups that seem hell-bent on turning all of us into lab rats.
There's something that has gone wrong here.
History is unforgiving. It will become very clear very soon who was on the right side of history, who was on the wrong side of history.
My name is John, and I am a storyteller. And this is kind of my story.
Freedom Council is nothing without all of you. How do we go about getting people held criminally responsible for their acts? The military is still at risk. Election interference, the medicalization of childhood. These drug dealers like Pfizer and Moderna, we can seize their property. We develop our litigation through conferences like this. It's going to come through communications. It's going to come through conversations. And Freedom Council is that conversation.
For information, visit freedomcouncil.org.
I knew as early as February 2020 that I needed to do something.
I recognized that there was a systematic problem and that this was not about hydroxychloroquine, it was something larger.
Fear shut the world down and people made a lot of money at it as they were killing us.
I was asked to speak at a freedom rally that was set up to discredit my reputation.
Whoever orchestrated this must not have the safety of this nation in mind.
Medicine and politics should be separated. These doctors were handcuffed.
The American public has awakened. We have a new civil rights movement to restore our rights, and we're going to hold them accountable.
It is a natural progression of a man of God or woman of character to see injustice, to seek it out, and then to act upon it.
Do you hear me? We will never lock down again. This is the hill we die on.
Don't miss New American Heroes with attorney Warner Mendenhall and John Davidson, Mondays on BrokenTruth.tv.
Hey, with Broken Truth, I don't know if this is technically a New American Heroes show or not. We got to work on our name, Warner.
All right, that's fine. There's so many heroes out there. I mean, honestly, there's millions of them. And it's all the people who have fought back. It's the vaccine injured. It's the people who lost their jobs over the mandates. We have millions of really unsung heroes in this country. And I think it's great that you're trying to get these stories told on Broken Truth TV.
Well, and I think it's great that you're lending your credibility to me. Because I need it.
For what it's worth, some people probably differ in that view, but I'm happy to participate and do a help out.
Well, it saved me from having to go, get a JD or anything. So, hey, so today's topics are going to be the Tulsi release on Friday, which is huge. And then I don't, I know if everybody knows about this story with Joby Weeks, but he was the Bitcoin evangelist guy that was arrested and put through 6 years of torture without a trial or conviction or anything. So I had a great interview with him, and we released it yesterday. So today's guest is going to be a dear friend of mine and yours, Brad Geyer, former AUSA for the Department of Justice. And Brad, we're going to get you in here now. So
great.
Welcome, Brad.
Great to be here, guys. A pleasure.
So I think
with fellow freedom fighters, baby.
So we're going to try to do this show straight. Usually we hang out in the bars, so this will be a fun transition. But like all the shows that we do, I do kind of want to keep them casual if we can keep them casual, because they're a little more fun that way, right? So Brad, as far as Tulsi's disclosure Friday, what do you think about that?
I mean, we've known about most of it. There was supporting documentation that I hadn't seen before, but she clearly came with the receipts. And for it to be communicated from the nation's highest level representative of the intelligence community, I think the mode of communication makes it completely different. It elevates it to a level where the Attorney General is going to have to take a look at it. But those allegations we've known about since 2016, 17, 18. This has come out in drips and drabs. We're going to have to see what the Department of Justice is going to do. These are very serious allegations. I would expect at some point there's going to have to be a special prosecutor appointed. There may be grand jury investigations going on now. I view it from the perspective of the rest of the enforcement. This is all stuff that's going on up in the heavens. That's just kind of above my pay grade. And I think it could be disruptive for enforcement across the Department of Justice platform. But we're just going to have to wait and see.
Well, the elections issues, I mean, this has concerned me, really for the last couple of decades. And Brad, you may not know this, but we actually sued some time ago over what we called the black box voting machines here in Ohio. And we sued based on an issue in Ohio law that said the count has to be observable. And to me, logically, when the things are fed into a machine and scanned, all you observe is the scanning. You can't observe the counting. And the only way to observe counting is with hand counted paper ballots done by human beings, not machines. And in reading through everything that came out, I mean, gosh, I appreciate the insight. I appreciate the additional materials, but it really, the only reason they were even able to make those allegations is because they had created a situation where there's a problem with the cybersecurity in the United States. And it's this, to me, it's almost a panopticon of all of the, local boards of elections where the federal government gets to have insight into what's going on throughout the country. I don't trust those machines in the first place. They're hackable. We've seen them hacked in 10 minutes by people who know what they're doing. Some of them are connected to the internet through wireless technology that's embedded in those machines. And then we saw in the Tina Peters trial that here's an elections official trying to figure out what is going on with the machines and whether there's a problem with the count. And she wants to have information about those machines, and she is now sitting in prison. So, I mean, the problem, and how many million, this is another thought I have. How many millions and millions and billions of dollars now are being spent at the federal level on elections and so-called cybersecurity, when what we really need to do is buy everybody some ballots that can be hand marked and hand counted.
I agree. The simple solution has to be hand ballots, hand counts. Any other system is going to be compromised. At some point I heard that CISA was going to be shut down, but it still seems like it's. I'm not sure where that is. I think it was.
I think they just approved a new facility outside of DC. So if anything, they're getting bigger.
Well, you could start right there and just shut that whole thing down. That's just a web of intrigue and problems. And I agree with Warner. The only solution, longstanding solution, is hand ballots, physical appearance, verify ID, and hand counting.
Yep. And the thing that's interesting, it's very easy to look back historically and see Democrats complaining about this, and then you've got Republicans complaining about this. So it should be a very bipartisan, no-brainer issue to get through, because both parties agree.
Alleged, I don't think, well, behind the scenes, I suspect that one of the parties vociferously disagrees and will do everything they can to prevent that from happening. I mean, I would even be in favor of what they did in Iraq, where they dipped a finger in indelible ink. I mean, let's just make it totally secure.
Yeah, well, we have to get back there, because I think it's the only way to really restore trust. We have a problem of trust in the country in general. We have a problem of trust in the elections, whether it's a Democrat or a Republican who wins or loses. And the only way I see to restore that is to have some kind of process that everybody trusts, where local people are counting those ballots. They call in the numbers. It's not running through a machine. And then even worse, with the algorithms that are going on in computers right now, with the AI, I mean, the ability to fudge that data is just exploding. And if we have AI involved and manipulating the elections, which we probably already do, I think we got a real problem on our hands, and we're going to lose our democracy.
I agree.
Just to bring it back though to what
Yes,
Tulsi, what she really focused on was that the Obama administration used intelligence agencies to weaponize news media. And
Now,
that's huge.
And we've known this now since really the 2000 election. There was reporting on this in early 2016, the abuse of the FISA applications. We saw the stuff with Strzok, the disclosures that were made there, how they intercepted the discussions with Kislyak, with General Flynn, that were just, it was like a cordial thing at the end of a conference. It was no big deal, and they just drove a wedge through that. And in my view, really went way too far. I mean, I remember the White House being redecorated at some point. Remember that one where they did a huge unannounced redecoration of the White House? I assume they were sweeping it for bugs. And what I would say to the intelligence community is what Warner said before. I was in the federal government for 21 years. I am like, in 2020, I had my faith in government completely stripped from me through the whole exercise with COVID and a bunch of other things. And I think too many Americans agree with me. And the first thing I would want to do if I were in an intelligence agency is to bring it back in line, make it nonpartisan again, and be really clear on what your purposes are for engaging in all this surreptitious information gathering. The rules are there for a reason. The Fourth Amendment still stands supreme. I would be seeking to figure out how we can comport our current operations with the language and spirit of the Fourth Amendment.
Yeah. So, Brad, I wanted to bring up too, you were part of antitrust, right, with the DOJ?
Yes, for many years.
And am I not mistaken in that when you were there under the Obama administration, they reduced staff of that group?
Yeah, so in 2009, there was a big drawdown in criminal enforcement for the antitrust division. They closed 4 field offices and put 100 prosecutors out on the street. Very few people complained. They were the most experienced price fixing, bid rigging, procurement fraud, and grant fraud prosecutors in the system, and they were just basically eliminated. This happened to accompany a drawdown in criminal enforcement resources across the procurement fraud and grant fraud space that never really has been turned around. I'm beginning to see some signs in the last couple of months, actually, that they may be rebooting that program. But in terms of like who it was who was protecting the hen house, the government coffers, there really has not been vibrant criminal enforcement now for a long time. The inspectors general, they're not doing most of the things that you would expect them to do if they really wanted to root out fraud and corruption and fraud, waste, and abuse. Again, I see this as this is going to if we did in fact see the trough and are on our way back up, these are going to be changes that are going to unroll, say, over the next 5 to 10 years. These institutions are not made, to turn around on a dime by design. It takes time. But yeah, there have been cutbacks before. There have been agencies that have been cut. And I think that when President Trump took office, we were at an all-time high in terms of government employment. And I think that some trimming of the hedges is in order.
Sure. And when you're talking about procurement fraud, that I do a lot of work under the False Claims Act. And I have been often frustrated by how long it takes to bring a fraud to light. And, we do try to work with good federal prosecutors and federal investigators, but we are talking about years, before something is revealed. And meanwhile, the fraudsters are continuing to defraud and collect money, and they literally pay the fine or penalty at the end of that process out of the additional fraud they've committed. And I just, it's a very frustrating on my side. And then I will tell you this, recently I have felt that we are once more, at least in some of the offices around the United States, we are definitely feeling more of a collaborative sense. So when I first got into this in the 90s, we had very close collaboration, to root out fraud. That ended for a period of about 10 years. I would say your period that you're pointing out, when the Obama administration was in there, especially with the mortgage fraud, the banking fraud, all the crimes that were committed there that went unprosecuted, and really destroyed our financial system. There should have been some real penalties and consequences, like in the old days, like what was it, the Pecora Commission in the 30s. But we never saw that happen. And most of the people who were engaged in that skated away with bags of money, and they paid a pittance in a civil penalty or civil fine, but they didn't face criminal consequences. And then, since that time, I would say it's been very difficult to work with the various U.S. attorneys around the country, but I see a change right now. I'm literally on the phone with them, every few weeks on some case or another. So I'm feeling that change, a little more collaboration. We were just asked for input on a major SBA fraud case, for example, the Small Business Administration fraud.
Are you seeing interventions?
Well, we have, yeah. The change takes a minute. We were hopeful that we can get interventions. Obviously, that for the public, that means that we bring a case with a whistleblower. It's filed under seal, and the government has time to determine whether they want to intervene and assist us on that case. It's supposed to be 60 days under the law, but it's often 2 years. And what has happened in many cases in the past is we really didn't feel like things were being looked at. Recently, we've been able to respond when the defendants come in and put up their position. We've been asked to get a responsive memo out to that and why the defendant's interpretation of the law is incorrect and why they are liable for the millions in federal funds that they've taken.
So, and that's after it was partially unsealed to have the communication with.
Yes. Yeah.
So
right.
that's a positive. I'll take that.
It's progress. It's progress.
Have you had any buyers on helping you get discovery?
In which?
In other words, they're not willing to partially unseal it for the defendant company or the subject company, right, but will support your effort to get discovery, and you proceed on your own.
I would say this right now. We will be testing this new environment within the next year. We have the Deb Conrad case certainly up in Buffalo. I hope to have good discovery on that one. I know we're getting off track here a little bit, John. I'm sorry we're going off onto the procurement fraud and fraud.
Nerds.
All mine are under seal, which is good, right? The fact they're under seal is good. They haven't been declined.
Yeah, exactly.
So I too am cautiously optimistic, and I would plead guilty to being hopeful that this new stuff I've seen since the president took over is reason for optimism. But I'm an optimist. I will see.
Well,
I will tell.
That's the only reason we're still lawyers, Brad, is we've been at this a while and we've maintained our optimism. Here's what I'll tell you where the optimism comes from. And it's at every level in the federal government, actually, because you and I criticize the federal government a lot. And John, you criticize the federal government a lot. But what I would say is there are many patriots within the bureaucracy. And I think it is very important to work with them, find out who they are, make sure they're not suppressed and fired, instead that they're elevated to positions where they can really do some good. So many people, I mean, we work with, FBI agents, good FBI agents, good Office of Inspector General agents. We work with good assistant U.S. attorneys and U.S. attorneys who want to help. They want to do something. They're asking us to bring them cases. And I just appreciate those people so much, because we know at the higher levels, at the upper levels of this, we saw this complete misuse, and we'll get back to the D&I report. This complete politicization, I can hardly say that word, of the investigative process, targeting individuals. With Joby, I mean, the problems with that investigation, so that really needs to change. And hopefully, you're right, Brad, we can get back to a bipartisan consensus, or maybe even a multi-partisan consensus if a new party forms here, as to what the national interest is. And the national interest certainly is to not have fraud happening in our election systems, and to not have fraud in our financial systems, and not have fraud in our procurement systems.
Exactly.
Speaking of the Joby situation, this is a good transition. There has been obvious selective enforcement in the federal government, and that's what's frustrating for a plebeian like myself. You see Gates Foundation walk away from any IRS or DOJ investigation into its tax exempt status. Mm-hmm. There's a guy named William Scott in Florida who I'm friends with, and he's 80 years old. He spends his food budget filing these things to try to get the IRS to just investigate the evidence that's out there about the Gates Foundation. They won't do it. They won't even investigate the Form 211 that he submitted to the IRS. And it's frustrating considering how that may have actually harmed people. And then you have a situation like with Joby Weeks, where he was a marketer, a promoter of an entity named Bit Club, and just the act of being a promoter made him a target to the DOJ. Now, if we're gonna go down this path, then everybody that said safe and effective also needs to be targeted. Are we going to do that? No. Oh, okay. I guess it's selective, and that selective enforcement is where people like me get frustrated, because it seems like it's a department of injustice, not justice. Hey, what do you guys think that before we really get into the nuts and bolts of Joby's story, I show the little video that we made that summarizes his situation. It's about 5 minutes.
Oh, I think that'd be fantastic. Yeah.
Great. Awesome. Okay. Here we go, kids. In 3, 2.
In 2010, when Bitcoin was worth less than $1, Joby Weeks saw a future in the digital currency. In 2015, he became a computer hardware vendor and promoted an organization called Bit Club, and Joby sold the group the computers and hardware they needed to put servers all over the planet. But Joby was never a manager or owner of Bit Club and had no decision-making ability in the organization. Joby traveled the world promoting Bit Club and libertarian ideals. He helped buy, install, and build server farms outside the United States for Bit Club, All transactions occurred in Bitcoin instead of US dollars, and BitClub was closed off to American investors. In other words, BitClub operated outside of United States jurisdiction and regulation. According to blockchain, before it was confiscated, BitClub has mined over 92,000 Bitcoins and 500,000 Ethereum. But what was Bitcoin? And more importantly, how were global governments going to tax it, track it, and control it? The law was not clear. Bitcoin was supposedly created by an elusive figure named Satoshi Nakamoto. According to Google AI, in Japanese, Satoshi means intelligence, and Nakamoto means from central origin. Who does that remind you of? In 2019, Joby found out about an investigation into him by the Department of Treasury. With the help of contacts at the CIA, on April 19, 2019, Joby met with a Department of Treasury officer, offered information about BitClub, and explained his issues with BitClub leadership. The Treasury officer's notes indicate Joby had no control over BitClub and wanted to help the US government catch hackers and international criminals. In December 2019, due to the actions of the owners of BitClub and an overzealous Department of Justice, Joby Weeks was arrested by the United States government, locked up in various prisons for 11 months, and put in a situation where it was either confess to a crime he didn't commit or spend the rest of his life behind bars. At that point, Joby had amassed nearly $500 million in digital currency. Despite no valid reason to do so, agents of the government took Joby's Bitcoin wallet, denying him the ability to legally defend himself properly. The crux of the government's indictment of Joby is strange. The indictment shows Joby told BitClub users to use a VPN, which is simply smart security advice. In his meeting with the Treasury officer, Joby discussed being hacked by a transsexual Filipino hacker who took over $20 million from him. Clearly, security was important. Another section shows emails and messages where he demanded more transparency from BitClub management. And the Department of Justice's smoking gun against Joby? In a communication where Joby was negotiating new server purchases with the owners of BitClub, he stated, "We can't just sell people mining hardware in BitClub and then not use the money to buy equipment. It's not right. BitClub makes 20% regardless of the price." Under tremendous duress and increasing pressure from the government's targeting of digital currency, Joby was denied bail, his right to a speedy trial, and states he was tortured until he took a plea deal, which included a crime he wasn't even indicted for: tax evasion. Once out of prison, he was placed under house arrest. Due to the nature of his coerced plea deal, Joby fired his attorneys, filed countersuits against the government, and asked a federal judge to revoke his plea. We reached out to Amjad, the Treasury officer who met with Joby, for comment and received no response. For 5 years, Joby has been under house arrest, denied access to his lawfully obtained funds, and trapped in his own home with no access to the internet, a computer, or a cell phone. It's one of the most egregious violations of due process and civil rights we've ever seen, and a perfect example of the kind of lawfare exacted on citizens through government overreach. Now, Bitcoin is worth nearly $120,000 per coin, meaning the US government not only robbed Joby of his wealth, but when it cracked down on BitClub, the US government also seized the servers that investors had purchased to mine the currency. How many BitClub investors were defrauded, not just by the actions of BitClub's owners, but by the federal seizure of servers and assets? I recently met with Joby Weeks in an interview on a very important day in his life, the day his son was born. This interview is significant not just because of the crimes against Joby, but to highlight problems in our government we need to fix. Presenting the trials of Joby, a BrokenTruth.tv exclusive interview.
Shameless plug.
Wow.
If
Very
you'd
nice.
like to have if you'd like to have a video like that made for your product or service, call me at magicfeatherinc.com.
Very, very well
Hey.
done, John. I'm impressed.
Hey, thank you. So that was a really fun interview. It's on brokentruth.tv. You can just search for Joby if it gets buried if you watch this a couple weeks from now. Anyway, that was such an interesting interview to have because I didn't know about his story really before I, looked into it. And, well, obviously that would, but anyway, but it was so surprising how the guy's been under house arrest for over 5 years now. And,
and that was after 11 months of being shuttled between prisons during the height of COVID, when it was pretty much total isolation in these federal institutions. Just terrible.
When you see how the DOJ doesn't target some things, but then this guy, they really did target. And the thing is they called it a Ponzi scheme, and they said that, you're the expert on this case, Brad, but they said that they were just taking money and using the money from Peter to pay Paul, which was the definition of a Ponzi. But they did invest in server farms, and they did mine over 92,000 Bitcoin and over 500,000 Ethereum. So there was work being done, hardware being invested in, and that was seized by the federal government, who didn't even really have jurisdiction. How does this work, Brad? Please explain it.
Yeah. I think it's a perfect storm of factors. If you would have come, if I was a prosecutor in 2019 and you told me that there's this BitClub network and they're mining Bitcoin, and they're selling memberships and mining Bitcoin, and this is going to be where I too I might have jumped and thought that this sounds like a pyramid scheme. But as I think you're aware, John, I shared with you before that for the last few weeks, I've been basically reviewing every single crypto case that's been filed, every enforcement action, civil and criminal, going back to 2000 and I think 12 to 13. And what I've concluded is that most of these prosecutions are really not well founded. I think it was an effort by the Department of Justice in a legislative vacuum. They didn't really have a lot of guide rails, but just like they went after kidnappers before there were a kidnapping statute, or child traffickers before there was a raft of child trafficking statutes, they sought to use existing things like conspiracy statutes, statutes around issuance of securities, even though it really wasn't clear back then what BitClub even was. By the way, I'm sorry, what Bitcoin was. BitClub also mined Ethereum. So in addition to all the Bitcoin you mentioned they mined, they also mined a whole slew of Ethereum. And the way Joby comes into this is he was just a guy, kind of a dreamer, huge optimist, aspirational thinker, where if you do affirmations, great things can happen, to the country, to you, to your family. And he was out, he discovered Bitcoin early, started buying it, discovered Bitcoin mining, went out and offered his services in procuring all the server farms that are necessary to do this Bitcoin mining. And I think it's hundreds of millions of dollars of Bitcoin equipment, mining equipment that he bought and helped install, things like that. I think the number that comes to my mind, it might be $900 million, right? And during this time, he had a childhood dream of making his 100 best friends millionaires. So he's just promoting Bitcoin, telling everybody who will listen, you have to buy Bitcoin right now. Take everything you got, buy Bitcoin. And of course, during this progression where he got into the procurement of the server farms, the government didn't like him very much. He's always got a smile on his face, and he has some eccentric ideas. Our country has always coexisted with Americans, innovative, visionary Americans who have eccentric ideas. It's only been I would argue it's been recently where the government has really made it a sidelight to go after these guys. And they went after Joby. And I've looked at some of the search warrant documents. I mean, I think there were mistakes made in terms of how the search was conducted, how the receipts were logged and tracked. We don't really have a good idea what happened to about 300 Bitcoin that were seized. I've looked at some of the stuff. It looks to me like it really wasn't well authenticated or documented. Also, there's not a lot of clarity on how these server farms were shut down. Were they shut down the day they went in with the search warrant, or did they continue mining Bitcoin and Ethereum? And what happened to the Bitcoin and Ethereum that was actually on those thousands and thousands of computers? We don't really have a lot of clarity on this, but the bottom line is this guy's been put through absolute hell. His family got blown up. That's a whole backstory. He's been under house arrest for over 5 years. I think he's going on 6 years. By the way, where'd you interview him? It looked like a really nice. Was that in his apartment?
No, that was in the I'm sorry, that was in the hospital.
Nice. He's having his baby. I don't want to give anything. He's having his baby, and he broke away for your interview.
Yeah, I mean, I was down awesome. There for the Thrive in 25 convention thing that we threw, and I had been chatting with him a little bit, trying to maybe get an interview, and then his wife gave birth, so I was like his wife gave birth at like the night before that day or something like that. Within 24 hours of me showing up, and then he was like, "You could come to the hospital," and I mean, he had permission to be there, so we weren't doing anything,
They let him go to the pretrial services. Let him go to the hospital.
Yeah. So we go to the hospital, and by this point, he's now got all the nurses in the nurse station like pro crypto, so they're all looking forward to retiring early.
The guy's a born salesman, isn't he? He can't help himself. Yeah.
He is, and he goes up to one. And he goes, "Hey, do you know where we could get a good interview?" I mean, and it's just me with a couple of cameras like in my backpack.
Yeah.
So she goes, "I know just the place." She takes us to this beautiful thing, and that whole window. Honestly, it couldn't have been a better. Perfect. It was kind of a divine thing, I think. So that was a really just perfect location, despite some technical glitches with one of my microphones and stuff like that. It really came out well, and I think because he had just gone through this, I don't know about you, but even if you're not the one delivering the baby, it's pretty traumatic.
Oh, yeah.
So he had just gone through this like emotional explosion. And then I come up in there and interview the guy. It's amazing he didn't fall asleep, but it also, I think, gave me a very kind of raw truth stream from him, and it came out really good. It didn't seem like I don't know. It just was. I think it was a good interview, and I'm stoked that I was able to be there and even take pictures of the baby. Although I didn't get to hold the baby, I really wanted to.
I want to pull this back to some of the legal issues involved, if I may, John.
Please.
One of the things that really, I'm very interested in cryptocurrency and what was going on with that. And there's a great science fiction book called Cryptonomicon. If anyone wants to look that up, that's a fantastic book that was kind of pre this explosion of cryptocurrency, but anticipated some of the issues. And what was happening back then, we're talking now in the aughts, right? The 2000s, there was no regulation of this. They did not know what this was. And I think what strikes me, the most on a case like this is, it's really backward. It's applying some kind of, current structures that they built up and applying it a backward look to a situation that was essentially for a long time pretty much unregulated. They didn't know whether this was money, securities, how to classify it, and yet they have now been prosecuting people about this. And we've got Joby's case and of course Roger Ver's case that are out there that are really instructive. So Brad, if you could talk to us about the enforcement. This backward-looking enforcement with this cobbled-together understanding of cryptocurrency.
Well, as you know, the Office of the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, issued a cryptocurrency white paper, essentially, which is now, I understand, codified in the second of the three crypto legislative frameworks that were signed by the president on Friday. It's the Digital Asset Forfeiture Act. And he basically raised what I think is a very legitimate point, that you can't regulate through prosecution. And that's in fact what happened here. It's why I think Ross Ulbricht from the Silk Road prosecution was ultimately pardoned. It's why I think a lot of these guys are ultimately going to be pardoned. You mentioned Roger Ver. He went to the government basically declared him public enemy number one because of a lot of his opinions. He was very outspoken against what happened at Waco. He ran as an independent in California. The political establishment hated him. As a result, he was prosecuted for firecrackers. I'm not making this up. And he did an 11-month prison sentence. And it was clear to him that he would not be left alone, nor would his family and associates be left alone. So he left the country as a because basically he was under duress as an act of self-defense, if not for only him, but for his family. And he got a legal opinion from top law firms, top accounting firms about what his tax, it's the exit tax, which I believe is unconstitutional, but even assuming it is constitutional, he had top flight accounting and tax advice. He paid the amount, and the government essentially lied in wait until Roger made an appearance at a very lax in terms of extradition country, Spain, and the poor guy's been stuck there away from his family ever since. I think that the underlying tax problems were involved the 2014, 2012, 2013 timeframe, where the IRS didn't have a position. They didn't even know what it was. Is this currency? Is this property? They didn't even know, right? So that case should go away. So too with Joby. I've looked at, and we're going to issue a white paper, I think, here in the next couple of weeks. We could not find a single peripheral promoter. You have the designers of these crypto exchanges. You have those who own and operate the exchanges and manage them. Joby did none of those. He was not even a BitClub member. And we sort of categorize him as a peripheral promoter. We can't find a single other peripheral promoter who was targeted like this by the government for criminal prosecution. And again, a lot of the conduct that the government alleges is criminal was during this very strange time where there wasn't really clear guidance. The CFTC had spotty guidance. The SEC had spotty guidance. The IRS was all over the place. And so a lot of these guys were just basically targeted because the Department of Justice felt like there's something wrong about this conduct and we should exert enforcement control over it. But Congress, being a little bit slow, hadn't set up the framework within which the enforcement apparatus can operate. So I think a lot of these cases ultimately have to be dismissed. Joby's, Roger Ver's. Also, I'm helping 6,575 currently non-American Chinese, ethnic Chinese around the world who bought into a stablecoin exchange, the Himalaya Exchange. It was formed it was formed outside the United States. It took great pains to ensure that it would not fall under U.S. jurisdiction. The U.S. government went out and seized $630 million in custodial accounts. That was basically like the reserve fund for the Himalaya dollars and the Himalaya coins. They had top legal counsel from around the world regulating this, making sure, overseeing it. They had the most arduous compliance procedures in place, know your customer procedures, including facial recognition, all this stuff. And I think I looked at it when the government went in and seized the accounts, which I believe they had no jurisdiction to do. I think they were both shocked and horrified that there was actually all the money was actually in the accounts, but it didn't stop them. They took it anyway. And the basis for taking it is that it has some kind of a tie to Miles Gow. To this day, I'm unaware of what those ties were. He was not a exchange member. He did not play any role in forming it, operating it. There were no proceeds that I'm aware of that went to him. I'm not aware that that's in the public space. I don't think it was brought up in the prosecution. And yet the Department of Justice has basically just completely stolen this stablecoin exchange, which was used by ethnic Chinese around the world to share funds. Like if you're in China or you're in Singapore and your family member in the Netherlands needs to go to college or needs to get a medical procedure, you could use the stablecoin, again, which was backed by reserve funds, dollar for dollar. And in a lot of these closed currency nations like China, for instance, you can't get your money out of there. It really had humanitarian purposes. So I'd like to see the Department of Justice ultimately, when there's going to be a commission that gets back to the Department of Justice to give feedback on how the Blanche memo can be incorporated into this Digit Asset Forfeiture Act in terms of enforcement. Ideally, they'll look at a lot of these cases like Joby's, like Rogers, some of these seizures, and just hit the rewind button.
Well, I think you're raising a really interesting point, and I think we all see what's happening, but I'm gonna put an emphasis on this right now. You know, what you have are Chinese citizens who want to be free with their money, free to use it as they want to, spend it as they want to, give it who they want to. And the reality of the governments, and right now the US government, is they don't like that we are free to exchange value with each other. They want to have control of it. They want to have insight into it. They want to know where it's going, who it's going to, what you're spending it on. You know, so there is definitely there is really a tension and a fight now between a control grid, I believe, and freedom, and these cyber currencies were a way to, initially the big thought of people, who were looking at it, especially early on, this was all about freedom, and I get the issue with Silk Road and that, how do you control for it being used to pay for drugs or other illicit activities? And I guess, but I'm really appalled at the way the governments have cracked down on our financial freedom. I mean, even you and I go into bank accounts and they want to, they write a report if you're going to deposit over $10,000 and they're going to report that. I mean, $10,000, I mean, it's a lot of money, but I don't think that should be something that the government needs to know every time I withdraw or deposit $10,000, for example. And then, I'm going to link out into another thing. We've seen our banking shut down among many people in the COVID movement. So you're dealing with a population of people who just wants to be free, wants to be able to move their money, travel, and have the money accessible to their families. And that includes American citizens who don't want to be canceled, have their credit cards canceled, have their bank accounts canceled. I mean, I could tell stories about that all day long among some of our clients. So, it's clear why people would get interested in it, to try to carve out a little bit of area of financial freedom. That's part of what this is about. And I guess I have a question for you at the end of that discourse. How do you balance between the illicit behavior that can occur with financial privacy, such that can possibly occur with these cryptos, and the freedom that I think is actually necessary to live a healthy life and not feel like you're under government oppression, even if you're in the United States?
Well, there's always a tension there, and that tension will be there forever. I think that these three new pieces of legislation are going to get these internal working bodies in DOJ.
Name the three pieces. The Genius Act. What tell everybody what you're talking about.
the Genius Act is the global empowerment of new innovations for U.S. success. So it creates a blockchain innovation task force under supervision of the Treasury Department. So it'll be a big task force involving DOJ, SEC, CFTC, and FinCEN. It mandates, finally, clear SEC and CFTC definitions of what digital assets even are. I mean, believe it or not, that's a matter of some dispute. It offers tax incentives for crypto mining and staking operations compliant with IRS reporting. So, like, if Joby had done what he did, and incidentally, the owners and operators of BitClub, instead of doing it 10 years ago, had done it now, it very likely would have been covered by, they would have gotten tax deference as a result of doing that. We'll see. And the second was a Digital Asset Fairness Act, which ensures fair notice and due process in crypto enforcement. Of course, this is directly speaks to the Blanche memo, where you can't use enforcement as a regulatory tool. That's what happened to all these people who we've previously referenced. So it prohibits DOJ from pursuing criminal charges for regulatory violations. We've clearly seen that. That's all over Joby. That's all over Roger Ver. That's possibly over Miles Gao. However, he has no connection, as far as I know, he has no connection to the stablecoin. They used forfeiture to forfeit the Himalaya Exchange, even though I still have no idea what the connection is between Himalaya Exchange and Miles Gao. So it's a little bit different. It requires courts to review pretrial asset seizures to ensure that they do not impair on defense rights. This is emblematic of the entire system. They go in, they take all the money, they confiscate it. Joby right now is represented by a federal public defender, right? Like, they get all their money. And we saw this in January 6th, too, incidentally. All that pro bono money that's out there through grants, none of it found its way to guys like Joby. None of it found its way to the January 6ers. Yet now we're starting to see the flood come back in. You see the big law firms getting back into the space for federal employees who are fired or whatever. And then finally, you have the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve Act, where the Treasury is going to buy 200,000 Bitcoin over 5 years. And part of me wonders if they're planning on rolling all of these seizures, these illegal seizures, into that Bitcoin reserve, at a basis of zero, right? So, we're in a state of flux right now. There's always going to be, money's always going to be used for the drug trade and illicit activities. And since Bitcoin is on the blockchain, you can track every single transaction on the blockchain. It should be more secure in that regard. So I don't believe that that's really the motivation. I think it's confiscatory. The motive, I believe, is confiscatory. I mean, you have hundreds of millions of SWIFT transfers through the banking system are fraudulent every year, right? Having a SARS form, how many millions of SARS forms are completed for transactions over $10,000?
These acronyms, we probably should tell people what they are.
Suspicious activity reports for transactions over $10,000. It's a banking requirement, and there's a raft of these things that happen all in the back of the house in these banks, and it's reported to these agencies, and presumably they're looking at it, they're reviewing it. But I think that if they're really going to fix this, and by the way, this ties into Tulsi Gabbard, her release last week. This ties into overzealous crypto enforcement. This ties into the January 6th prosecutions. This ties into the homicides that occurred at hospitals. This ties into independent farmers who've been targeted all over. I have cases with Robert Barnes helping the Amish. That's another story. This is a beleaguered class, primarily of Americans, who think outside the box, or otherwise they're creative, and they've been targeted. And the first step is getting to transparency. We have to really look under the hood and see what our government has been up to for the last decade or so. I think it transcends parties. Both parties are, pigs at the trough here, but we have to realign our systems so that they once again are headed true north. This can't be allowed to persist.
Let me. I think that's exactly right, and I think we have a huge task ahead of us. I mean, that's part of the reason why, I helped form Freedom Counsel, was to have lawyers who were available to look at some of these issues that are, in some ways, they're disfavored by the big firms. The big firms will not represent people in these spaces, period. I guess I'm glad to hear that you're telling me they're starting to wake up and take on some of these cases. But I mean, we have people out here who are just helpless, hopeless, without legal recourse and without even basic legal advice sometimes. And there's not been an effort as well, I would say, to help educate lawyers along these lines. That's the other thing Freedom Counsel does, try to educate lawyers and the public, and this issue. I mean, Brad, I honestly, the next conference we have, I really want you to do a presentation on this area of law and how we, what the issues are, what the conflicts are, where it's going, and how we can represent people. John, I want to throw one more thing at it. I know I'm hogging the time. I'm sorry, but
no, it's all good.
It's good.
This is fascinating. But one thing I want to throw at you, I really like Catherine Austin Fitts. You've heard of her. And one of the things that she's always concerned about is what are the Trojan horses to bring in the control grid? And, and I wonder, all of this stuff could be good or bad, depending on how it's implemented, how it's used, and things that eliminate or reduce our privacy in our financial lives and personal lives. I think they bother me a great deal. And I worry about a control grid where someone sitting in a central office can turn off my access to my Bitcoin or my bank account or whatever financial, tool I'm using. So what do you think about that thought that I think we have to be aware of that. What do you think about this, and where could it be used as a Trojan horse, and why, if you think it's okay, why do you think we're going to be okay under these new, the passage of this new legislation?
Are you asking John or me?
No, you, Brad. You're okay. We got you under the hot lights, man. You're in the deposition.
Okay. So talking to a lot of these crypto guys, I have a bunch of these clients now. They're very concerned about Bitcoin precisely because of the blockchain. And there are some emerging crypto technologies where the whole thing is blinded. And I can understand from an enforcement perspective why the U.S. government wouldn't want that. But I'm also very sensitive to your concerns. And what I can say is, I did hear President Trump say that there would be no centralized digital currency on his watch. Now, I hope what that means is that his crypto task forces will make darn sure that doesn't happen from an enforcement perspective, and that the White House articulates that as policy to the working bodies of Congress to pass legislation that protects us from that. But I'm not so sure that it's just not a slippery slope. Like it may just be one of these things where it's inevitable and there's no way to avoid it. Like all these worst case scenarios spun about where artificial intelligence is going. And there's a school of thought that just says, we're done. It's going to happen. And there's no way out of it. Like I have the same concerns about a centralized digital currency.
Yeah. Do you know Aaron Day?
I think I do.
He's been very vocal, and he's been working on the privacy issues around our money and the cryptocurrency issues. And frankly, John, maybe we ought to have him on to talk about what his efforts have been in that space. We'll have Brad back, have Aaron Day on, and let's get it from one of the people who's innovating in that space right now. Because Aaron's, as far as I know, he's been living from his work in the cryptocurrency world exclusively for, maybe over a decade now. So he's not even, he's not operating in the normal economy at all. Everything he does is he moves through the world with his cryptocurrency and buys and sells and lives that way, as far as I know. And we should have him on to talk about it. And he's very interested in creating the privacy and privacy coins and getting ahead of this thing. Because I'll tell you, in Akron, we had a tumbler situation. And I knew the gentleman who ran the tumbling operation, but he gets arrested because all he was trying to do was to make sure that the Bitcoin people were buying was anonymized. It would go into a tumbler so you couldn't track it. Well, he got targeted over that tumbler idea. And I frankly, since the conviction, I haven't talked to him. I did not represent him, but I'm very, very curious about those kinds of things. And all he was trying to do was create privacy with Bitcoin. Because it is trackable to a great degree, and that's the point. Is initially it was not supposed to be trackable or tied to the individual, and we're seeing that has happened. Oh, John, we can't hear you for some reason.
There's a rumor that Trump's goal is to essentially destroy the IRS. And I don't know how many people outside of the IRS would be sad about this. Maybe accountants. But in what scenario would exist, say, if there was no IRS and there was no need to enforce taxation? Would a person still want to have anonymity in transactions? That would be legitimate.
Oh, honest to God, John, I think that's so simple. I don't want people knowing what I eat for dinner. Yeah, I mean, it's simple. I don't want them to know what presents I've bought my kids for their birthdays or Christmas. I don't want any insight. Your purchasing patterns give you incredible insight into your psychological profile and how you operate in the world and what you're interested in. I don't want them knowing what I'm reading. When I buy a book on Amazon or buy a book at the bookstore, I don't want that tracked, that I'm reading Cryptonomicon or some book like that that's predicting the Bitcoin explosion. I don't want them knowing that. I want to be able to
told us about that some years ago, Warner.
What's that?
You could have told us about that like a decade ago.
Yeah, I know.
You're a little late on that book recommendation. Thanks, pal.
It's all right. But I mean, those are just things. When you see what somebody's reading and looking, and we know that, basically Cambridge Analytica, the company that started to analyze voters and push voters through Facebook and other mechanisms, and actually Trump used it incredibly powerfully in 2016. But Cambridge Analytica, they were able to take, I think, 30 to 40 data points, and they basically had a profile of your personality and how to target messaging to you. So I want as much of that private as possible. And we're so far beyond even that now. They have hundreds of points of data on us now, millions of points of data now. And with the wearables, they're going to have our heartbeat data every second and our blood pressure and everything else. I don't need them to know when my blood pressure is going up. But it's just those are the types of concerns that I have. When I'm spending money, they get insight into who I am as a person. I want to be more private than that. I don't want you to know who I am.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think about the IRS being destroyed?
I've looked at this. Let's just eliminate it. We should eliminate it. And there is actually a non-trackable way to actually have government revenues. And I don't know if you guys have come across this. It's called the automated transaction tax. So every transaction is taxed a tiny, tiny bit. And it's an automatic thing. It's not linked to your money. It's just as you deposit in a bank, as you make a transaction, a piece goes to that. And we could actually completely retire the US debt very quickly if we went to an automated transaction tax. And there's a great analysis. I'm sorry, I forget the guy's name. I think he was an economist at University of Wisconsin. He came up with this in the 90s. And it was about 1.7% of every transaction would take care of the entire federal budget plus some. And the thing he worried about is if it got implemented, it would provide too much money to the federal government. Because the other thing that it does, I'll run this by you guys too, it affects the high-speed trading on Wall Street because those are transactions, and the high-speed traders don't want this. But I mean, we could afford to slow down the volatility on Wall Street, in my view. And the advantage that people have of taking advantage of the speed that they can actually trade to gain, they're taking a little bit from all of us too, every time they do those high-speed transactions now. So it would slow that volatility down and make the high speed not lucrative, and switch them back into normal stock trading, which I think would be a helpful thing. Anyway, I'm sorry. Brad.
No. That was a really good explanation. All that sounds very reasonable to me, and it sounds like it could be a good idea. But
you have no IRS, no investigations, you do eliminate. I think you eliminate about $300 billion of spending in the economy with accountants and lawyers. So we would be taking some of our business away, and we'd certainly be taking a lot of accountants.
What do they do though? After they're eliminated, what do they do?
Oh, they could go build houses. We have a housing shortage.
I'm not seeing this happening anytime soon.
No, I think what we've seen, look, every time we have huge innovation, such as the car, right? Such as the light bulb, we think we're going to put people out of work. It never happens. The economy grows. Innovation does not slow down the economy. It does create turmoil in the job market, but jobs come back. Jobs are out there. I can look around my city and tell you there's plenty of work to do at every single level. And we do need to, we need to make sure our kids are educated. We're not educating our kids properly in any of the city schools around my town. I think they have a D or an F grade, all of them. And, that's ridiculous. So let's get some accountants in there to teach some math. They could certainly do that. I'm just saying, yes, it creates turmoil in the job market, but all the innovations we've ever had have just done what? Expanded our economy. I think that's still true. I am watching closely this issue with AI and whether it's taking job. But I think in some ways it's improving work as well. It's improving analysis as well. So I'm mixed on the AI, and I am very curious as to whether it does. It's certainly going to take some jobs and eliminate some jobs, but it's going to open up all these other alternatives, all these other ideas. I'll give you one quick example. I'm sorry, I'm excited about this. One quick example is that right now you can get on the internet and you have an idea of something you want to do. You can literally feed that into the AI so it will help you start to generate a program that will run your idea on a computer, for example. So how many ideas are held back because somebody doesn't have programming skills? We actually did it here in this office. We created a software using one of the AIs that does an analysis for our personal injury clients. And you know what else we did? We told it to take the insurance industry Colossus program so that it brought that into its understanding and make sure that our demand letters, for example, the way we were structuring our cases actually counteracted the algorithms in the Colossus program. And so we've been using that for about a year here now. So I see all kinds of possibilities. And that was me, a non-programmer.
What's that? Is that program named Hal? Remember 2000 Space Odyssey?
Sure. Oh, I know.
Hal was the greatest guy until he wasn't.
I know. Well, and there are some things that we need to keep, out of the digital space, such as voting. We'll come full circle here. We need to keep the voting out of the digital space. There are some things we've got to make sure are human run, no matter what the efficiency issues are. And I actually think with the in-person, hand-counted paper ballot voting, we're going to spend a lot less than the billions we're spending now running around, talking about cyber fraud in the elections.
Yeah, I want to go back to your AI analogy or discussion, because what I see the future of legal battles being are really AI warfare. You're gonna have these idiots with degrees generating a fight, and then the defense is going to generate their own idiot loaded AI defense, and they're not going to. The judge is going to say something that they're not prepared for, and it's going to be clicking until they get an answer.
Well,
so it's really.
I think the AI empowers. It actually empowers the older attorneys to a great extent, because they have the ability to distinguish of what's going on, to distinguish arguments. They're so ingrained in their areas, and that all that experience comes to bear when you're evaluating whether the AI is giving you something useful or something that's pure idiocy. Right. And I think we need to help the younger attorneys use it appropriately and properly. We're working on all those issues right now.
Well, what it also does is it penetrates the veil of esoteric knowledge in every industry, right? Medical or legal or coding or, investment. Like, if you have this ability to say, okay, break this down without, myocarditis means enlarged heart. Oh, thank you. It really does open up doors to people who don't have this significant education. I love it. In a lot of ways. Sometimes it lies to you, though. Yeah. Grok is renowned for its own logical fallacy of appeal to authority, and you call it out, and it just stops responding.
John, you're a big fan of getting rid of the IRS and tax planning and all this stuff.
No. Hey, but Joby was an advocate for those things, and they targeted him.
Yeah, no, I think that probably didn't help him. Did you hear Elon Musk was talking about how, and I think the time estimate was like next fall, that they'll be at Singularity, where an AI program will be able to write a movie, cast it with AI characters, film it, cinematography, everything in an instant. It'll be published. And that's like next fall, pal. Yeah. So you better get that resume working.
Look, I'm excited about it in a lot of ways, because for me as a producer in Hollywood, like, it was, you had to rely on staff and crew and everything else. I can do a lot of things on my own, but this is really leveled the playing field from the big studios to the little indie guys.
Are you using
so it's really a great
editing?
thing. I don't use it to edit, because like the thing that you saw, that's all just raw Johnny in the 5-minute clip. I mean, I don't.
You need timing.
I think
you need a sense of timing.
I think with AI, it's I don't know if it can extract the personality. I mean, I know that one of the things ChatGPT was accused of was loading in scripts for movies and things like that, that it didn't have copyright access to. And that's certainly, I can understand why they'd want to do it, because they want to train it to be quirky, to have organic kind of edits and more interesting copy. I don't know if there can be an AI Tarantino. Maybe. But the beauty of some of the best films and television and whatever that we watch is not in its perfection, but its imperfection. Right. And that's harder to train. Like, I used to be, told like, I can hire all these people, but you can't teach taste.
Yeah, right.
And that's, and if you know me, I have the most tasteless jokes out there. So what do I know? But that's a thing. Now, will AI eventually be good enough so that it can entirely emulate the creative process and come up with its own ideas? Maybe that's what the Singularity thing is going to be. Yeah. I don't know. But it's a wonderful tool to help you get what you want, but you may still need that human to have the weirdo idea that becomes The Sopranos. Waste management guy named Brad that lives in
some ways. You're making your point, though. I mean, people have these ideas, these imaginations, and now they have a way to implement them by working with AI to get it implemented and share these ideas. So it's going to be fascinating to see what happens. We have had the widest ranging conversation. I don't know. We started with the DNI stuff. We went to Joby. We went into automated transaction tax, AI, elections. Let's
sober as a judge. This is better than when we're at the bar.
Let's go back to maybe did you want to do about an hour here today? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, I think we're probably.
Right. Well, let's bring it back home with Joby for a minute, because I'm upset at the way he's been treated, and I guess I have a question about the about the house arrest and the lack of contact with phones and computers. I mean, that's a serious hindrance on somebody just living a normal life in today's world.
Or a pro se litigant.
Yeah. So how long does he have on house arrest, and what's what's going on with that, Brad?
5.5 years, I believe he's been on house arrest.
How much more does he have? Yeah.
Pleading guilty probably told the statute of limitations. I'm sorry, the Speedy Trial Act, or it may have been that he told it. I'm not sure, but I'm sure that they covered that. They wouldn't. That'd be a bad risk position for the government and the court. So there's some rationale, which is tolling speedy trial. And right now, I know he's waiting for the district court judge to rule on his motion to withdraw his guilty plea. I mean, the quickest way to get all this stuff resolved is to just have an internal working group and look at these instances where, let's just say policy has changed.
Yeah.
And the best way is just dismiss it with prejudice and move on. You could probably wrap it up with maybe some civil remedies or something to help save face, or I'm not sure, but
look what they did with Kirk Moore. He just dropped it.
I mean, that was huge, and my hat's off to General Bondi for making that call. That was the right thing to do, and the whole medical freedom movement stood up and gave her a standing ovation.
Yes, they did. Yes. Well, and I guess one of the things I wonder about with the cryptocurrency traders, have they stood up? And I guess I'm just not familiar enough with their social media accounts and that environment, but have the cryptocurrency folks, have they stood up for Roger Ver, for Joby Weeks? What would you say? Or are they trying to lay low because they're worried about being targeted as well?
It's probably all the above. You have some folks who've really, been vocal advocates for them, and then you have most people kind of stay out of it. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of this crypto development is also fueling media development. I mean, there's new media properties that are kind of built around crypto. And I assume being funded by crypto. So you're seeing it's having some dramatic impacts in media as well.
Okay. Is there a place that you would recommend somebody go if they want to learn about these things? Obviously, John, your interview is going to be on Broken Truth TV. So that's a good one. And then are there some other communities, Brad, that you would recommend people participate in to learn about these issues?
What I would do is keep it simple. Go to Twitter. You can follow me at Former Feds. But also just put in the search bar, just put in a hashtag Bitcoin or a hashtag crypto. Mm-hmm. And the latest stuff that's breaking at that moment is going to be hitting on Twitter. I recommend, LinkedIn has a real problem. That's really not a good platform. It's just getting smoked by Twitter, and it still has a lot of censorship protocols in effect. I test it all the time. LinkedIn is useless. Facebook is pretty much useless, but Twitter, X.
LinkedIn is Reid Hoffman's organization.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just.
Wasn't he bought out by Microsoft on that? incorporated LinkedIn into the Microsoft group of companies.
Possibly. Let's make it worse.
I test it all the time, and their censorship is just brutal.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, gentlemen, this has been a great conversation. Thank you both for being here. And Warner, I think we're going to do this again in a week, huh?
I'd like to do this in a bar sometime.
Brad,
we got to set up in a bar.
I know, right? Like a couple of fat stogies, whiskey on the rocks. I think that would be a good show. I think that show would get more ratings than this.
I just got this had a win with a Indian client.
We can't. It's getting fuzzy. Oh, there we go.
Oh, Rumpur.
Oh, wow. It's Indian whiskey. Is that what it is?
It's an Indian
bourbon
malt whiskey. Single malt whiskey.
Oh, wow. Nice.
I hope you paid import taxes on that. Well, awesome, gentlemen. Thank you so much. Brad, anything else you want to add?
No, thanks for having me on. I enjoyed hanging out with you guys.
Yeah, you too. And, if you're watching from the DOJ, guys, just cut. This seems like a pretty easy case to just cut your losses on. I don't know how much more you can put this guy through before it really just becomes a really big mess that is just going to make everybody look bad. We clearly have bigger fish to fry in this country.
We do.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you both so much. This is Broken Truth. I'm John Davidson, and we'll see you in a couple of days.
Yeah, nice to see you.